Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Rock and Roll Shin-Soo Choo. My name is Gabe Estel. Good to be back with you. I am here with my co-hosts Dennis Levi Leach and Jonathan Getz. How's it going, fellas?
Pretty
Doing
good.
good.
Good to see you. Glad to be back right before the holiday season here. Gonna talk today before we really get going on today's focus about some of the hot stove is still hot. It's still going on. Still some big names out to be had. But the Royals made some moves recently this week with the acquisition of Chris Medlin. And I think Kendrys Morales was a couple weeks ago. Guess who else did they sign? Chris Medlin and who else?
Medlin, Edinson Volquez, and
Edinson-
Alex Rios, and Kendricks.
And Rios.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the Royals, they arrived a little bit later on the scene than the Cubs and the Sox, but kind of making a splash of their own right now by acquiring, I would say, some second-tier talent, but still stuff that could help the guys that could help the team.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think the Volquez obviously replaces Shields, but go ahead.
Well, yeah, that would be aspirational. But it's interesting because they're spending some of that World Series money. In years past, they would have signed Kendrys Morales and been done with it with the whole off season. But since they got a bit more money, and they want to appease the fans for the joyride that everybody went on in October, and so they went in and got Rios. And either one of those signings, I'm pretty indifferent to, especially when a guy like Mike Morse was available and signed for less money with Miami.
Yeah.
And he was absolutely frightening to see up there every time he went up to bat against the Royals in the World Series.
The White Sox drafted him actually.
Oh, really?
Way back.
Yeah.
Early. He's getting up there in age, but I always liked the way he played. He can play the outfield, he can play first base too.
Yeah, he's got more of a fear factor in him than I think Morales or Rios does. The Edinson Volquez signing was, pretty prudent. But I'm pretty excited about the Chris Medlin signing. Granted, the guy's had 2 Tommy Johns, but before those, he was pretty much the ace of the Braves. And the upside with him is pretty high, and you've only invested $7 or $8 million in him for a couple of years with an option for a third year. So I thought that was a pretty nice signing.
They didn't do anything dumb, you know what I mean? Like they didn't go crazy with contracts or anything like that.
Right? They didn't give Alex Rios a 4-year deal, thank God.
No.
That would have been dumb.
Yeah.
They know they don't have to give people these long-term deals because they've got the pieces in place to win the whole thing next year.
Right. Right.
So you don't really have to award these big contracts when your window's a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
It is a little odd that after going to the World Series for the first time in nearly 30 years, they didn't make an attempt really to bring some of the guys back, like Butler. They let go. Shields, which I think it was most people didn't think they were going to resign him just due to the cost.
Mm-hmm.
And then Aoki,
right?
Guy, I was going to tell Levi this. I think Nori Aoki would be a really good fit for the Cubs in the outfield. Kind of a speedy guy that can play defense. He gets on base.
He can kind of play defense, but he's not as.
He's not terrible. He would be relative. He's still on the board. I think he would be relatively inexpensive. Outfielder. Why not?
Yeah. Like on the Soriano meter, better or worse as a defensive outfielder.
Right. He can get the job done. So.
Yeah. I think they took emotion out of it. A lot of these decisions were made pretty much by midseason. The idea that, okay, Butler's not coming back, Shields isn't coming back, and that was pretty much just a given as far as the sentiment around town went. It was, people in July knew that these guys weren't going to be around next year.
And that's not a bad approach because you can get too attached to guys.
Right.
And, as much as I'm thankful for the guy's service. I think the White Sox did that a little bit with Konerko. It was such a it was a sentimental contract,
right? Right.
That they gave him a couple times, and that's not always the smartest approach. Definitely the team's sort of thinking with its heart instead of its head there.
It can work if the player's willing to negotiate and to give the hometown discount. But if they're not, then you just gotta let them go.
Right. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next. I mean, obviously, I have this weird prediction, and I want to run this by you. Even though the Yankees got that kid from Arizona, I think his name's Gregorius. I might be mispronouncing his last name. You guys know what I'm talking about? Yeah. From Arizona, and he's supposed to be really good, but I don't think he's panned out quite yet. I think the Yankees, unfortunately, are going to trade for Tulowitzki. I think they're going to get him within the next couple weeks.
I heard the Mets are interested.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think they want somebody of that caliber to fill in for Jeter.
Yeah.
Like Tulowitzki is one of the best short. Probably, I would say, arguably, he's the best. He's the best total package at shortstop as far as hitting goes as well.
But he's getting so big. He seems like he's destined for third base in a couple years, just like A-Rod. Yeah.
Could be. I mean, they've got Headley now at third. They did re-sign him.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. I could see it happening. I could be wrong, but I don't know. And if he goes to the Mets, I mean, I think the Mets to be good.
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So it seemed like they'd just be taking on another contract and not really having the pieces around him. But But anyway. So a lot of stuff left on the hot stove, a lot of big names still out there, and we'll probably know a little more. Yeah, it has. It's been really exciting for all three of our teams now. Everybody's been active, so that's and I'd probably be remiss if I didn't mention the San Diego Padres suddenly, unexpectedly become the biggest free agent players.
Good for
them. I don't know what the hell's going on out there. Yeah,
they're all in.
Yeah, they're all in. I mean, they acquired 5 starters. That's more than half your lineup. They've changed.
Yeah. Dealing like an NBA team.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to get much out of Kemp. But Myers trade. I mean, if he's kind of a project, I would say at this point.
Yeah. Still.
But
yeah.
Anyway, so we'll see. A lot of stuff going on out there in San Diego. All right. Before we move on, we're going to talk about live music today. A recap of the year in live music, shows we saw, maybe shows we wanted to see. And then we're also going to talk about some double bills that we would like to see. But before I get into that, in the news this week, within the last week or so, I should say, Billy Corgan, lead singer, well, the only real Smashing Pumpkin left, I guess, has kind of been shooting his mouth off in the press, saying he doesn't understand the popularity of did he say Pearl Jam and Soundgarden?
Foo Fighters.
Is that the other band?
PJ and Foo Fighters.
Pearl Jam and Foo Fighters.
Excuse me. Okay. Obviously two other bands that kind of emerged at the same time, or well, relatively the same time. And the Foo Fighters and Pearl Jam playing arenas and stadiums, Smashing Pumpkins, playing clubs, I guess. And that's really what it is. What do you guys make of this? Because to me, he's just always been a shit talker. So I just kind of shrug.
Yeah.
I mean, that's his thing.
He always had more talk than talent. I always thought sometimes that's what makes bands popular. You know what I mean?
Not to say he never made any good music, because I think the dude did.
No, exactly.
I've got some in there.
I was going to connect it a little bit to Sex Pistols, and the Sex Pistols were really fucking great at marketing. And it was like, the whole package. And the Pumpkins kind of had that. They were like the gothy band, and he talked his smack to all the bands. I just think it's funny about how his biggest complaint in the interview was saying that everyone knows that it's not a 3-star record. So I don't know why we're getting 3-star reviews. With that, it was just like, wow.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah,
that's him. I think he'll always be.
I listen to it. It is what it is.
I gave each song the iTunes listening, which is the first minute 30 of each song or whatnot. I gave it the old iTunes shuffle, and they didn't grab me. For nothing. So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I guess if we're gonna stay in the same circle and compare, Billy Corgan to Dave Grohl or Eddie Vedder or Kurt Cobain, which Billy Corgan likes to group himself with Kurt Cobain because Kurt Cobain isn't here to defend himself.
Right.
That out of all of those, the rest are pretty like jocular in a way. But Billy Corgan seems to be the most competitive, oddly enough.
He's got a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, he's like the run of the litter who feels like he has to go try to beat up the biggest guy in the room in order to prove himself, and the other guys, even though they're like more overtly, sports fans and things like that, as a lot of the members of Pearl Jam are, or the idea of arena rock. It's Corgan who acts like the arena rocker. Out of all three, and it's kind of strange. And I mean, I think that the interviewers are just having fun with him. I mean, they just set it up on a tee and let him shoot his mouth off, and it's like the interview writes itself. They don't have to do much.
Yeah, absolutely. He obviously, I think the fact that it's just him in the band too has hurt their popularity. I mean, it has to. I mean, he's only calling it the Smashing Pumpkins because that makes it more marketable. People aren't going to show up.
The rights to that name.
Not as many people are going to show up if it's called the Billy Corgan Band.
Yeah.
This is not as many people are going to show up if it's called the Axl Rose Band.
Yeah.
You go from playing arenas to theaters then.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's already playing theaters. And he just seems bitter about it all. He seems really petty and really bitter about maybe success that he wasn't able to sustain.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it was like a really specific time and place for them.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they got popular because I think everything came together at the perfect time for them to get popular. I don't know if they necessarily would have if there hadn't been the like grunge. If grunge hadn't been around, I don't. You know what I mean? Because they kind of come off as too artsy at points for mainstream listeners.
Good point.
I mean, I think with grunge coming around, a lot of those labels were really eager to sign something that sounded different. You guys would have to Google it, but it's on BuzzFeed or Spin or somewhere, and it's like the 10 craziest alternatives to get major label deals. And it was all these bands like Jawbreaker and stuff like that, like these bands that don't really, like, if they're good or not, don't really have any commercial appeal, but they were getting like big record contracts because of Nirvana and because of Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and maybe even the Smashing Pumpkins. So so I think that ties into Levi's point that they benefited from the timing of the release of Siamese Dream.
Definitely, and it's disappointing because in their own right, in a vacuum, it can be entertaining music, and it's a unique sound. But when you put it in the context of the writer of that music thinking that it's a competition, then it really taints it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and the thing is, he wants to hold it up with music that's been made forever. So it's like, man, if you can't put Smashing Pumpkins up as saying it's one of the best bands, or they have one of the best songs, or they have one of the best albums.
Let other people decide that for you.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't think they would ever be listed in that. In that context.
I'll stand by this. I think Cherub Rock is one of the best opening tracks ever.
Yeah, it is.
It's a good song.
Yeah. It's that right out of the gate. That's a killer.
Yeah.
There's some good tunes.
They always had that good, even though that was their nostalgic feel to it. And so listening to those songs, they take you back, or me personally, they take me back to a time in the early 80s. But I can't look at them deeper than that. I can't look at them being masterpieces or anything.
Yeah, it didn't have the staying power with me that other bands that he's comparing himself to did.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. Great way to wrap that.
Yeah, and he's a shit talker, and that's what he does.
I mean,
That's
you
his
almost
thing.
feel sorry for him because he's so insecure.
Yeah.
It's sad, and
Right.
it's like, dude, you only need to worry about your own music and how confident you are in that. Don't worry about what other people think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of sad.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk now about the focus of today's show. Talk about live music from the year. So some of the shows that we saw, as well as some of the shows maybe we would have liked to have seen, and then also who we would like to see paired together on tours soon. In my case, with my choice, it's probably before it gets too late. So I think I'll just go around here. If you guys want to just tell me, what was the best live show you caught all year? And then maybe also you could say the most disappointing live show that you caught. I mean, personally, I didn't get to see as many shows this year. Fatherhood will do that to you. But
absolutely. I'm in that same boat.
Yeah, right. But I still was able to get out there a few times. So, Jonathan, what about you? We'll start with you, man.
Yeah.
I know you had a pretty good year for live music.
Yeah, it was a moderate year in terms of amount of shows, but I was pretty happy with the diversity there. With a local venue called the Riot Room started booking more indie bands, and so I got to see Yuck and Angel Olsen there, as well as later in the year Mudhoney, and the Mudhoney show was pretty awesome. This is a joint that only holds a couple hundred people, the Riot Room. And so I was essentially, I was essentially leaning on Stevie Turner's amp stack like during the show. Even after the show, I just like pulled the set list off the stage. I just like reached down and yanked it, and so that was cool to see them. And they played FDK, Fearless Doctor Killers, which is appropriate being so close to Kansas. And so they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. And other than that, though, we had a pretty busy October going to see Pearl Jam in St. Louis and Tulsa and Lincoln, Nebraska. And definitely highlights on all three of those. Chloe Dancer, Crown of Thorns. Bob O'Reilly with a 10-year-old kid whose birthday it was, that they just pulled up on stage, and the kid like screamed all the words from the stage. It was phenomenal. And Lincoln, Nebraska, they did Open All Night, the Springsteen cover from Nebraska, which was fantastic.
Nice.
A couple days after that was the War on Drugs, and the War on Drugs in Lawrence, Kansas was fantastic. Hands on the stage, and just a wall of sound. So the War on Drugs.
Bottleneck?
No, I think it was the Granada.
Okay.
Yeah. But the War on Drugs set. Under the Pressure, Ocean in Between the Waves, phenomenal. Cover of Tangled Up in Blue was pretty. I mean, it sounded like he'd been singing Tangled Up in Blue for 30 years. Just nailed it. And Closing with Baby Missiles is pretty crowd pleasing way to go. Arcade Fire and Paul McCartney. Seeing them, it's hard to pick a favorite. The one that I was probably most anticipating was the War on Drugs. To finally get to see them was pretty fantastic. Though seeing McCartney play "Live and Let Die" was also on the bucket list. Because to pony up for the ticket, pretty much that was all I needed to see to make the price of the ticket worth it. Was "Live and Let Die." So, but that and back in the USSR.
Right?
What's that?
Was that in Kansas City?
Yeah, that was at the Sprint Center here in town.
There was the one guy in the crowd, like,
yeah,
simply having a wonderful crowd. Come on, play it.
I was the guy yelling "Spice Like Us." All right.
Right? And I was the guy yelling "Junior's Farm." So yeah.
He has been doing Junior. He has done Junior's Farm over the last couple of years. He has the last.
Yeah.
Good run of shows.
Yeah,
no
yeah, it
shit.
wasn't bad. Out of all of those, the War on Drugs was probably the most anticipated and the most fulfilling.
Nice. Good deal.
But as far as my old man
I,
syndrome, what I bailed out on the last minute though, that I wish I wouldn't have in hindsight.
Could have gone to, but didn't.
Yeah, St. Vincent in Lawrence was one early in the year where just after she had released her new record, that I was like, well, I've only kind of started to get into this record. I don't know if I want to go. And in hindsight, it's like, oh God, I wish I would have gone.
She's going to be huge. I mean, she already is, but I mean, I think she could probably fill bigger venues.
She's
now.
opening for the Black Keys at the Sprint Center this week.
Oh, is she?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So that's
Band
my year
I
in
lost
review.
interest in. I got to be honest. Sorry, not to digress, but the Black Keys, that is.
I've always been kind of indifferent to them. Yeah.
I was. Yeah. Sold a lot of the records at the record shop.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're
Like,
popular.
Oh, yeah.
They're certainly popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. Levi, what about you, man?
I didn't get to go to as many shows that I wasn't working as I would have liked to. But I did work a lot of shows as my other job as a stagehand. And so I would say probably the best show that I heard this year, quality, was hands down Steely Dan at the State Fair. And I loved the set list. I thought the audio quality was excellent. I just thought it was a really good night. For a little while, you didn't feel like you were sitting in the grandstand at Springfield, Illinois. You know? And that's what a good concert does. That it takes you away. You know what I mean? And kind of as like a redemption song, seen this band in November 2013 in Peoria, and I'd gotten the tickets given to us, and they were kind of disappointed. And the lead singer's voice was not good at all. And so when I saw they were coming to Springfield, and I was going to have an opportunity to work with them, I was apprehensive. I was like, man, I wonder how it's going to be. And that band's the Moody Blues. And surprisingly, they sounded excellent when they were in Springfield. And John Lodge and Justin Hayward had mentioned the night that they were in Peoria that they were like under the weather, but you never know at it. You know what I mean? These are like rock stars that have been on tour for like 35. So they just say and like cover a night they're not feeling that great, or are they really sick or what? But they came to Springfield and brought it, and they sounded great. And one of the shows I really would have gone to, and I found out about it like 4 hours before the show started, was the Kentucky Headhunters played in Springfield.
Nice.
On a Friday night, and it was like not advertised hardly at all. You know what I mean? The radio wasn't promoting or anything.
Yeah.
And they just played it at like a bar on the north end, and it was like the all original member Kentucky Headhunters.
Wow.
That's
So I would love to
one
have
of the
gone
best
and
country
seen that.
albums of the 80s, man. Definitely.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so I kicked myself for not like it was one of those things where it's like, man, you can get a car and you can go, or you can't. And I old man syndromed it, and I stayed home.
Right.
Yeah.
We've reached that point. I hear you. Yeah, you know, I saw some good ones too. Strangely enough, one of the best shows I saw this year, I don't know if it was the best, but back in March, and it was over in Maryville, Indiana, at this venue called the Star Plaza Theater that I'd never been to. I saw this band called the Musical Box, which is this Genesis, Peter Gabriel era Genesis cover band.
Oh,
And quite frankly, they were phenomenal. They're from Montreal, and they were doing "Selling England by the Pound" in its entirety.
Wow.
And go on YouTube and check out some links of them. I mean, it's uncanny, like how accurately they recreate Genesis, 1975
Nice.
show essentially.
Yeah.
The costumes, everything.
Oh yeah, makeup,
The
all
stage
of it.
setup, I mean, the guy is so animated as well. Yeah, it was great, man, and the musicianship was just stellar. I mean, I'm not a musician, but those are really complicated pieces of music to play. Like these.
Yeah, there's no easy prog rock.
No, like 15-minute Genesis songs aren't really for beginners. So they were great, man. I highly recommend if they're around to go check them out because you won't be disappointed. Really, really good stuff.
Nice.
And they've done like a couple of years ago they did Lamb Lies Down on Broadway in its entirety. Even a few years ago as well, they did Trick of the Tail. So they did like a little bit of the early Collins on vocals era too. So it's just really ambitious project. I'm glad like people have caught on to it. But yeah, the musical box, they're great. So that was a good one. I saw The Cult, which was probably my favorite show of the year. I've been meaning to see him for quite a while. Started getting into them about 5 or 6 years ago. Like, I mean, I always knew who they were, but I really got into Love and Sonic Temple and Electric. Just really great albums. So I saw them in a smaller venue called Concord Hall in Chicago, and they were great. That was my first time out, like as a dad by myself too. So it was great. And Billy Duffy, I think, is really, I would put him up there as one of rock's most underrated guitarists. I think he's just a phenomenal player. He's got killer tone. Really just.
Excellent.
Really smooth stage presence. He makes it look really effortless.
I would say he's like one of the most underrated guitar riff writers of that era. For
Absolutely.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Like no one looks at him as they do like a Slash or someone like that. You know what I mean? And they should, because he wrote some really, really cool guitar riffs. Oh
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all over. I mean, and Ian Astbury sounded great. I mean, he's just such a cool character, So yeah, really good set list. Obviously pretty heavy on older stuff, but since I'd never seen it before, that was fine by me.
Yeah.
I mean, the She Sells Sanctuary just brought the fucking house down.
Yeah.
I mean, just everybody was just loving it. And they were playing it like they weren't sick of playing it either. I mean, they definitely they jammed it out. Like it just, if they're around again within the next year, which they probably will be, I highly recommend going to check them out. You won't be disappointed.
Right.
And there was also a really good opener that I hadn't heard of prior to arriving at the show called Electric Citizen, and they're from Cincinnati, and they're a metal band, but kind of in like more of a stoner metal sort of early Sabbath sound. And they have a female vocalist. It's a husband and wife team in the band, and they're really good. Yeah, they're called Electric Citizen, and I think they put out one of the better albums of this year as well. So that was really good. I got to catch Riot Fest, at least 2 days of it.
Riot Fest, yeah.
But it was a great one. The band that I liked the most actually was this band called Metric. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. Female vocalist as well. I'd heard them. I'd streamed the album once or twice, and I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was bad. But when I saw them live, they really tore it up. They were my favorite act there. I got to see Mudhoney, a little bit of Mudhoney at Riot Fest, which was great. Cheap Trick at Riot Fest. So yeah, good time there. And like Levi said, I also got to see Steely Dan as well. Probably the biggest disappointment for me. This is a hard show to characterize just because I have such a strange relationship with Kiss. It's like a kind of a love-hate thing. Like I love them, but the show in Las Vegas was, I think, much shorter than it should have been. It was like they only played for like 80 minutes. Which,
really?
Which I don't really get, because in Las Vegas, there's no I don't think there's it's not curfew applicable. I wouldn't think. So yeah, that was probably the most disappointing show for me, just based on length. And it was so weird to see Kiss in a theater. I mean, just like they crammed everything that would be an arena in a theater.
Oh, really?
So like they didn't need like the big, the big LED screen, things that they would have in an arena, but they had them still, like in the theater.
Weird.
So was like he was right. Like the band members were right there, but like also behind them was like giant projections of it. It was just, it was almost
like
too
artillery shells going off everywhere.
I would have liked to have seen them take that away, because it would have been like seeing Kiss. Well, not really, but it would have been kind of like seeing Kiss like in 1975, like you know when they were still playing theaters before like Alive and Destroyer came out and really blew them up. You know, I mean, if I could travel back in time, that would be like my dream show. Would be to like see Kiss in Springfield at the Armory, which they played in 1975. You know, like that would be just to see a band that young and hungry to want to take over the world. And I thought it would be. I was hoping for something like that. Instead, I got like Kiss's show, their big show, right? In a small venue.
Yeah, that's strange that they would do that. That's really strange.
Yeah. It seems unnecessary, but everything's kind of over the top with Kiss anyway. Yeah. So unnecessary but unsurprising, I guess.
Yeah.
So that was it for me, man. I would say the Cult probably wins it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really, really great show. I also did get to see the War on Drugs as well. Yeah. Who were, I feel bad for not saying that. I got to see them, but I'm embarrassed to say I left a little bit early because they didn't take this. It was a Sunday night, I think, and they didn't take the stage until like 10:30. So, like, I knew what the encore was going to be. It was going to be Baby Missiles. So I just was like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Old man syndrome kicking in right there at the end.
Yeah,
that's right. And as far as old man shows, I missed Torch. I've talked about on this podcast before how keen I am on Torch. They got a new album coming out next month. I've heard the first single, Minions. It's awesome. So they played at a small venue in Chicago, a new venue that just opened. God, I forgot what it's called. It's down in the Hyde Park neighborhood, South Side. And they played back in September, and I missed it. So I regret that. I'm sure they'll come around again, obviously with a new album.
Yeah.
And let's face it, everybody's got to be on tour. I don't think I'll have to wait too long to see him again, but I'm sad that I missed him.
Yeah, it was always a bummer when you miss a tour that's for your favorite album in hindsight. And I did that with Sufjan Stevens when he was touring with Illinois. And he was playing out in Lawrence at the Bottleneck, I think, and it was one of those last minute old man syndrome. I was like, never mind, I don't need to go. Obviously, we're partial to Illinois because we're from Illinois, and it turns out that it was quite the production. They have cheerleaders. They had cheerleaders in like Illinois outfits. Singing the songs, and that would have been really awesome to see. And in hindsight, definitely should have caught that particular tour. Even though I do enjoy Sufjan Stevens' later albums like The Age of Odds, but that one in particular would have been nice.
Yeah. Good stuff. Now, any shows that you guys wanted to see, or I'm sorry, I should say. Any set lists that maybe you weren't able to, you couldn't attend, if it was in another state or something. For me, the Pearl Jam shows in Moline and Milwaukee, where they did the albums in its entirety unannounced. That's just those get set lists of the year for me, just based on what they did. Just unannounced, we're gonna do No Code. Unannounced, we're pretty crazy. And
unprecedented. Well, kind of unprecedented for them. I think they once did maybe 10 in its entirety, but that was when that was all that they had.
Right? Yeah, yeah. But I mean, for them to do that, I mean, nobody expected that. Especially in Moline, we're gonna bust out No Code in its entirety.
Yeah, and it's not Halloween or anything like that. I don't think it was. But and it's, dude, I mean it. In hindsight, because obviously those are shows that we could have gone to if we, reworked the schedules differently as opposed to choosing.
I got offered a ticket to Milwaukee.
Yeah. It's to do it in those cities. All respect to Moline and Milwaukee, but it's unusual, and because a lot of times with those cities too, you think, okay, they've never been here, they haven't been here in so many years. With Moline, obviously they hit Milwaukee quite often. that, okay, it's going to be more of the hits. And for it to be the complete opposite is pretty surprising.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's pretty cool. It's like, hey,
they're good to the smaller markets, man.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's what
we saw that show in we saw that show in Grand Rapids, small market.
Yeah. And it was the best set list of the tour.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the best set lists I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
So yeah, Pearl Jam, their set list really isn't dictated by location always, you know. So.
Right. Yeah. Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Good stuff. Any other set lists that you guys didn't catch that stood out to you?
Well, I didn't touch on my disappointing show this year. Was definitely somebody I've always been into and I've always supported, and I really like this band's first record, and they subsequently just seem to be becoming too mellow for me, and that's Chris Robinson Brotherhood.
Okay.
And the show that I've seen a show on every tour they've done, and this year's show, it was just like, I don't know, it was like putting me to sleep. It was too as I think Gabe would say, too crunchy granola. And I love the Grateful Dead, and I'm all about folk music, but it was just, I think they've gone downhill in the quality of their output, that band.
Yeah.
The guy's got a lot of influence. The guy's got a lot of influences, and right now only one of those influences is really shining, you know?
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I don't want to say he's in a rut, but he's in a little bit of a rut. Yeah.
I don't think to him he is. I think he loves
it
right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean,
like it matters what we think.
There's a market for it. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they're selling tickets.
Yeah, no, he looks like he's having fun. It's just I'm just not into it. I can't really get into it. I saw it once. I went on the first time they came around to Chicago back in I don't know, it was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, it was like
2011, I think, something or 10, like that. And I was like, you know, whatever. It's too crunchy for me. I don't know.
I pass it up when it comes through.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I do have a set list I wish I would have liked to have seen. Levi, did you have any?
Off the top of my head, I can't think of any. No, I mean, I would have liked to have seen a lot of bands this year, but I didn't have hardly the time or the resources.
Sure. And granted, this is ironic, but the Government Mule Neil Young Halloween show. We give Mule a lot of shit for playing so many covers, but they do it well. Their choice of covers is nice, but sometimes it can be like too much candy. It's kind of, you know, it's everything in moderation. But when the goal is something like a Halloween show, and the goal is to do something really unusual, and the Mule played that entire Neil show with Revolution Blues and Scenery, Sleeps with Angels,
For the Turnstiles,
Downtown, Primal Life. I mean, the selection of the Neil songs was Piece of Crap with Matt Apps on vocals. Absolutely phenomenal. And I listened to the show, and it's pretty solid.
Jackie Green sang a lot, right?
Yep. And then actually, they did it again for their Christmas Jam.
Yeah.
Shorter. I mean, over Halloween it was, it was like 25 Neil songs. And for the Christmas Jam it was, I think, 11 or 12. But they also did a Faces cover for Ian McLagan.
Wow,
it was just pretty cool. To see that Neil tribute show would have been pretty neat.
Absolutely. Yeah, that would. Yeah, that one caught me too. I was glad that one's streaming on Panic Stream. I think.
Yeah.
And they need to release that on vinyl.
Right. Yes. Since they did the Floyd. Yeah.
I got an email saying my Dark Side of the Mule shipped, so I'll be able to give a review on it maybe anytime we get together.
Nice. All right, last topic of the day, guys. Want to talk about a joint tour that we would like to see. I guess it could be an opener and a headliner, or co-headliners if you'd like. In my case, it's going to be co-headliners. But so this is something that obviously it needs to be realistic. You know, it needs to. One of our caveats was this is something that could, you know, the likelihood of it happening maybe could happen, or it needs to be bands that are current and you know what have you. So Levi, I'll start with you here. What about yours, man?
I went with a little like UK flair, I guess this time. I was going with Gomez as the opening act, and I'd like to see them open up for Beck. And I was hoping that maybe Gomez's presence might drive Beck into being a little more like rocky on the tour, or like pull out some of the Midnight Vault, some of the mellow gold stuff. Like all of Beck's albums, I'm not sure Morning Phases and Gomez would work together, but
I don't know, man. Gomez's last few records suck. I'm sorry. Gomez's last couple records are
for
fucking
sure.
nerds.
No, I will totally agree with that.
No. There's a New Tide is solid.
Yeah, their songs on New Tide I like. I will say though, I've always considered Gomez a better live band. Almost to, I don't want to compare them to the Grateful Dead, but it's like the Grateful Dead never had a ton of killer solid studio records. I mean, they had American Beauty and Working Man's Dead.
I think In Our Gun is In Our Gun.
Oh yeah, In Our Gun is a great.
Yeah.
Liquid Skin, I think.
I
is
think
a really
the first
good record.
three are awesome studio records.
Yeah, but I think In Our Gun was the pinnacle of their studio.
Yeah, I think they're definitely one of the bands though that can still bring it live.
Oh yeah,
I still think they put on a really good live show. So yeah, I think I'm doing it more of just they're two bands I think would play well off each other. It'd be interesting to see how the set list came out. Like if Beck saw that they were playing something, he might be like, oh, let's try something from this.
Levi, on that note, a long time ago, it's like 2001, 2002, Beck did that tour where the Flaming Lips opened for him, and they served as his backing band.
Okay,
so you could even do something like that, too.
We were thinking the same thing there, yes. Yeah.
Which that's a tour I regret not seeing. Jesus Christ.
That was one of my favorite shows of all time. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, you did see that, didn't you? God. Yeah. Oh. Yes. And that was right around the time too, like Yoshimi was out, and
it was Yoshimi. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, good choice, Levi, and and guys, I know I give it on the chin to Gomez. The last couple of records, I just one of the bands for me that just my opinion of them was so high, and then it just dropped, Well,
and it goes back to what we talk about, which is these bands now, they have to tour, they have to put out records just to generate income, and when a band like that, I assume for those first three records they were all living on the same continent, and now they aren't. Some of them, I believe, live in L.A.
They were younger. They were younger. They probably hung out more. They partied more. Like just reflects where you were. When you're.
Well, they were on a major. They were on a really good contract on a major label.
They were on Virgin.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of critical buzz. Bring It On won.
Won what's the British prize?
No, Booker Prize is for books. I think.
I forget
the Rookie of the Year award.
Well, it's like the best British album.
Of the year.
I remember.
Can't remember the name.
I don't know. What's that award? Mercury Prize.
Mercury Prize. Yes.
That's what it's called.
Yeah.
It's a big deal. It's like it's the biggest British music award.
Alt J won it. Yeah.
And right. So all
right. Yeah. It's
Jonathan. What about you?
I think that I have a common denominator between two options here. Arcade Fire, a pretty diverse band.
Oh yeah.
And can bridge the gap between different areas of rock. And so I'd like to see Arcade Fire and Springsteen. Granted, Springsteen never has an opener, let alone really a co-headliner, unless he's at a festival or something. And with the idea too that they would, there would probably be some teaming up and jams going on and all of that. That would be a lot of people on stage, granted, between the E Street Band and Arcade Fire.
God. Get its own zip code.
And on the other side of that bridge, I'd like to see Arcade Fire and David Bowie do a tour. And I think I joked about that earlier this year, and it was like, oh, wait a second, that would be a good idea.
Didn't they play together once?
Yes, they did. It was
what I thought.
something. It was a fashion related, I believe. I don't know if it was like a fashion show or.
He must dig him, because it's kind of like a big deal to get that guy out now. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
He doesn't really make a lot of appearances anymore.
Right, and he did some backing vocals.
I mean, I think some of it's his health, but
yeah. But he did backing vocals on the most recent Arcade Fire record, and so yeah, I think there's definitely a rapport there. But to see kind of just even the production of it all, because Arcade Fire's production is it's modest in a lot of ways, but it's pretty intense at times. And to see what they could do together would be really interesting.
Good pairings, definitely.
Yeah.
For me, this one was pretty. It was pretty easy. It was just the first choice that came into my head, and I think, like I said, I think this needs to happen relatively soon. Neil Young and Crazy Horse and Pearl Jam, co-headliners. Same set list time for each of them, and then maybe an encore with everybody. Perfect tour, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of mainstream fans would be surprised that it hasn't had already. I think a lot of people are like, they link those two people together already. They've toured together first, but it's never happened.
Yes, right.
Yeah,
right.
I think the closest thing was the Rock Hall inductions, where Neil and Crazy Horse played, and then I think some members of Pearl Jam were up there.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And obviously, I'll say it, all three of our dream tours, Pearl Jam with the Black Crowes opening, probably, I would say. It's pretty much the rock and roll Shin-Soo Choo tour.
Well, and I would like to see the PJ Soundgarden / Temple of the Dog encore tour as well.
Yeah, that would be all right. Yeah, absolutely.
What about like STP Pearl Jam Soundgarden? Like they could get maybe those three together.
You would have to be careful, because
like a Seattle sound.
It would be. I think it would be marketed unintentionally as kind of the
grunge tour.
Yeah. So you don't want to get that label. I don't know if there was ever kind of a link between STP and those other bands, other than just being big at the same time. Did they do Lollapalooza or anything together?
I don't think so. I mean, STP's from San Diego.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they got thrown into the same category, and they emerged around the same.
Yeah, they were on the charts together.
Yeah. So, yeah,
but,
STP's kind of fallen anyway.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
Shoot, but yeah, I'd be down for it. And the closest thing you got with the Neil thing was the Neil Jam tour in '95, where Neil toured with Pearl Jam without Eddie as his backing band throughout Europe.
Okay.
I didn't think that wasn't like a lot of dates, right? I mean,
I think it was like a dozen, maybe 20. And they did a lot of Mirror Ball, obviously.
Is that around like the Mirror Ball?
Yeah, 95.
Yeah, it was for Mirror Ball. I think Brendan O'Brien even was on that tour as the keyboardist, and no Eddie.
Cool.
Nice. Good stuff, guys. Well, on that note, we're probably going to take her home here. Want to remind everybody to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and then also we've got the webpage going up, right?
We're working on it. Rockchew.com.
Rockchew.com is going to be arriving soon. But in the meantime, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and tell all your friends about us, because we'll be talking baseball and rock and roll here all the time. So until the next time we meet, keep up the on-base percentage and keep the amps turned up to 11. I'll see you guys next time.
See ya.
Yep.